Hello, welcome to Working with Miniatures. I'm Jim, and tonight we're going to be painting a classic horror, The Monster, from the Reaper Miniatures' Legends line. We'll primarily be using Army Painter Speedpaints and Warpaints. Let's get started. I primed the miniature with Vallejo's matte black primer, and after it is dried I begin with an anti-zenithal dry brush of alien purple. But this step I'll skip in the future, as I do this again in just a few short moments. With opal skin, I apply a zenithal dry brush over the entire model. I chose opal skin because it has a little purple in it, but it's light enough that I can add speed paint over it as a tint later. The opal skin covered more of the darker anti-zenithal dry brush than I had wanted, so I went back and re-added it. In the future I'll do the light color first, and then the anti-zenithal last, potentially saving myself a step. I then begin adding speed paints. I chose purple as my pre-colors as they were complementary colors to what I'll be using to paint the flesh. I've been trying to learn color theory, and this is an attempt at putting my meager knowledge to practice. The purple tones all but disappear, become a darker shade, which isn't what I was expecting nor wanted, but I decided to roll with it. In retrospect, I should have thinned the speed paint with medium so that it would not completely override the purples. As a side note, did you know that Frankenstein's monster was never described to be green by Mary Shelley, but rather a transparent yellow with his muscle fibers visible through it? This miscoloration came about due to tricks of early black and white cameras. Some shades of green would translate to a starker white in black and white movies, so the actor was painted green for a more ghastly presence on the big screen, and ultimately, the green would stick. From here I began adding shadows and highlights to the flesh. The army green is more like a mid-tone shade as it falls in between the darker and lighter greens that are already there. This is to help bridge the transitions between the lighter and darker tones. I then add two highlight colors over the lighter sections, covering less area each time. This took a lot of time as I tried to focus on getting thin, clean lines, especially on the face. In all honesty, I wasn't initially excited to paint this miniature, but with Halloween looming I thought it would be perfect since I did a pair of vampires this time last year. I found myself enjoying this once I got started due to the minimal paints I would have to shake and put on my palette. This is a great example of a miniature someone new to the hobby should be looking for. Well sculpted details with nearly no ornate additions, so you do not need to already have purchased a lot of paints. The last highlight on the flesh is done in the same manner, just covering less area than the previous, and again with a focus on thin, clean lines. I'm even more careful around the face, specifically around the eyes, upper cheeks, and the nose, only highlighting the tip of the nose as well as the individual nostrils. The clothing I treat the same way, however there are much fewer bulging muscles, especially on the upper legs. This guy skips the leg day on the regular. Because of this, the highlights on the thighs are larger and thicker as it's more of one large shape as opposed to a cluster of many small shapes, as found on his Scott Steiner-esque arms. I thin down the speed paint I use for the flesh and apply a very minimal amount to smooth the transitions, only in the darker areas however. I then finish the rope belt and hair off camera, though the paints I use will be shown on screen near the end of this video. I then dry brush the base with the same colors I used for the belt, applying flocking and a little static grass with PVA glue, and then I finish it with a few tufts with dark wash pushed into its recesses. An owl watches the angry mob below, the firelight of their torches twinkling in its massive eyes. Across the plowed field they had stalked until they found their quarry, this thing that should not be. Like all mobs, they are all bluster at first, surrounding and building their gall until one of their number finds the courage to strike. The rest would crash after, as if a dam holding their disgust finally gave way. They were not given the chance, for a massive hand reaches out and this is the end result. For lessons learned, though I use grim black with two light colored blue paints for the hair, they are indistinguishable from the grays I used for the clothing. I should have used colors that were clearly different, or I should have just used the same colors as I did for the clothing. In the end, this doesn't hurt anything, it was just extra paints I didn't need to bother with. I have some bad highlights with poor edges and transitions as well, especially on the legs, and I need to work on getting my edge highlights thinner, as there are quite a few spots, particularly on the clothing, where they're a little too thick. Good news is, this is starting to become a little less of a skill issue, and slightly more of a patience issue. Just going to wrap it up for today. I hope you learned something or were inspired to start or expand your own collection. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And if you like the content of this video and would like to see more, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm Jim with Working with Miniatures. I'm truly grateful for your time, and I bid you a fond farewell. Until the next video.